India's foreign policy. This is India's neighborhood policy. Now India's foreign policy, what we'll do, we'll go with basics and then we'll go into Nehru's foreign policy, Lal Bahadur Shastri foreign policy, Indira's foreign policy, ila veldam. So take down the heading. ఇప్పుడు టాపిక్ ఇండియన్ ఫారెన్ పాలసీ, నైబర్హుడ్ పాలసీ అయిపోయింది. ఈ వీడియో మీకు పెడతాను వాట్సాప్ గ్రూప్లో, నోట్స్ రాసుకోండి. రాదర్ దాన్ నోట్స్ డిక్టేషన్ కన్నా ఇది గ్రూప్ పెట్టేస్తాను, వీడియో తీసారు. ఏసీలన్నీ ఆన్ చేయమన్నా. ఏసీలన్నీ ఆన్ చేయ. ఇది మీరు స్లోగా వెళ్తాను, నోట్స్ కూడా రాసుకుంటూ వెళ్ళిపోండి. చాలా ఎక్కువ అంటే రేపటి దాకా ఇదే ఉంటుంది, నోట్స్ వస్తూ ఉంటుంది. రన్నింగ్ నోట్స్ రాసుకుంటూ వెళ్ళిపోండి. ఇండియాస్ ఫారిన్ పాలసీ మొత్తం స్టోరీ వెళ్తూ ఉంటుంది. ఏసీ ఆన్ చేయాలన్నా ఫస్ట్. ఇక్కడ కూడా India's foreign policy. Basically, India's foreign policy should be driven by Ministry of External Affairs, MEA. Foreign policy major decisions, the institution which takes major decisions of foreign policy is Ministry of External Affairs. But Prime Minister's office, PMO, takes a lead in foreign policy making practically in India. Prime Minister's office, PMO, takes a lead in foreign policy making in India. Prime Minister's office, External Affairs Ministry, in major foreign policy decisions, the cabinet. In major foreign policy decisions, the cabinet, and some important decisions by the Indian Parliament. Sometimes the opposition parties, if opposition parties are all against a foreign policy decision, you cannot take it. If there is a strong opposition parties, civil society, media, people of India, civil society, media, people of India also indirectly influences the foreign policy. At present, if you see the trend from last 1 or 2 decades, there is a shift in the institutions in the decision making in the foreign policy. Earlier we used to think it is just MEA, Ministry of External Affairs, it is the only ministry which takes decisions in the foreign policy. Now almost all the ministries are directly or indirectly involved in the foreign policy making. For example, say Ministry of Commerce. Now economic diplomacy, economic contacts are surpassing political contacts. So definitely Ministry of Commerce play a great role. Ministry of Defence, defence deals, or Ministry of HRD, Educational Development, Interconnectivity between universities, including Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. Last but not the least, it was Ministry of Rural Development also, to study and how to improve the rural areas, countrysides. From one country to other country, there was an interlink. So you cannot ignore even a single ministry today in the foreign policy making. So earlier it was basically External Affairs Ministry, even theoretically External Affairs Ministry. Now it is not just External Affairs Ministry, it is almost all the ministries directly or indirectly influencing the foreign policy. Not only that, earlier and even today, external affairs and foreign affairs are in the union list. External affairs, foreign affairs are in the union list. But now though still they are in the union list, even states, the units in the federal system in India are also playing a crucial role in foreign policy. Particularly, the states also having various connectivities with the foreign countries in the name of para-diplomacy. In the name of para-diplomacy, P-A-R-A, para-diplomacy. So, there are various institutions today, including even cultural contacts, even sometimes people to people contacts. All these things are playing a great role in the foreign policy decisions. So, it is Prime Minister's office, it is MEA, not only Ministry of External Affairs, but also other ministries are also directly or indirectly influencing foreign policy. Next is cabinet, next is parliament, next is opposition parties most of the times, and media, electronic media, print media, today social media also, and civil society, common man, and now today even the federal units, the states are also playing crucial role in the foreign policy making. The states also playing crucial role in the foreign policy making. So, remember this. And then India is now leader of third world countries, leading the developing world in the world. India is leading the developing world. India is trying to lead the developing world. Like see BRICS, India is a member in BRICS. India is a founding member of UNO, and also in all UNO summits India is taking a lead. And in climate change issues, India is playing a crucial role. You all know recently we have Katowice Climate Change Summit. Katowice Climate Change Summit COP24, COP24. In Katowice Summit also India took a lead in almost all the summits, and by 2020 we are going to have new climate deal come into force based on Paris intended nationally determined contributions, and India along with China and other countries led the deals. India is trying to persuade, and you all know by 2020 we are going to have new deal, and we are trying to limit the emission levels to pre-industrial levels 1.5 degrees. All these things we are trying to do that. India is also forging better things. In WTO, India is a major partner in G33 and trying to persuade the developed world to be sympathetic towards the developing world, to be very understandable in the understandable terms. How India is persuading the developed world. India is asking SSM, special safeguard mechanism, whereas the developed world is asking TFS, trade facilitation agreements. In WTO, India is playing a great role. In climate change issues, India is playing a great role. In BRICS as a member, India is playing a great role as a third world country, and in Asian Development Bank, India is playing a great role. In BRICS New Development Bank, India is playing a great role. In the recent Argentina G20 summit, Buenos Aires, India's role is impeccable, very strong. In NAM, non-alignment movement, India is playing a great role. In East Asia summit, 18 countries are there in EAS along with all 10 countries. India had a very great role. In international institutions like World Bank and IMF, now India's voting rights got increased. Along with G8, India is in Big Sam outreach country. Along with G8, there are 5 developing countries, among that one is India. And in IBSA is an informal forum led by developing countries in all the 3 continents. India is a strong country. And in Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, India is a very good partner. Recently, India became a member in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Regionally, India is a member in SAARC, leading member in SAARC. Regionally, India is a leading member in BIMSTEC. Regionally, India is a leading member in Mekong-Ganga Cooperation. And India is contributing a lot for UNPKF, United Nations Peacekeeping Force. And for UN reforms, UNS reforms, India is a leading member in G4. For security dialogue, India recently initiated Quad along with US, Australia and Japan. In Quad security dialogue, India is an active partner, and India is now becoming an active partner in RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and it is in the offing RCEP. And Indian diaspora, almost 3 crores, had a proper connecting link between, they play a vital link between India and the world. Name any country, you can find Indian diaspora. Name any country, we can find Indian diaspora. So, with all these things, India is looming large today in this world. For all these things, the base is India's foreign policy. For all these things, the base is India's foreign policy. It might be G4, it might be G33, it might be G20, it might be G77, or it might be IMF, it might be World Bank, it might be SCO, it might be ASEAN, plus 3, that is East Asia Summit. India is looming large today as a glorious country in the world because we have strong foundation in our foreign policy. Who made our foreign policy, and what is the base for our foreign policy, and who drafted our foreign policy, and why our foreign policy is like this, and is there any transformation in our foreign policy? Is there any transformation in our foreign policy is the next question. The basic architect of our foreign policy initially was Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Initially, the basic architect of our foreign policy is Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. The architect of our foreign policy is Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Listen, Indian foreign policy was initiated even before independence. Indian foreign policy was initiated even before independence. Particularly, India was against anti-imperialism, was against imperialism and colonialism. India followed the policy called anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. During the world wars, India never supported aggression. India never supported aggression. So, Indian foreign policy started in a very, we can say, proper, tolerant, better and idealistic way. In a very proper, tolerant, efficient and idealistic way. The first Prime Minister and the first Foreign Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, laid the foundations of Indian foreign policy. The first Prime Minister and the first Foreign Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, laid the foundations of Indian foreign policy. The first root of Indian foreign policy in the beginning is India started with anti-imperialism. India started with anti-imperialism. That means India was against domination. India was against domination. India do not want to compromise with its sovereignty. India do not want to compromise with its sovereignty, and in fact, India supported freedom struggles of various countries. India supported democracy in various countries, particularly Africa, Asia. The first foreign policy principle during Nehru's period was India did not believe in imperialism. India was anti-imperialistic, anti-colonial country, and India wanted to establish democracy in the neighborhood, particularly in the Africa, Asia countries. This is the first thing. And in the year 1947, Asian Relations Conference was held in India. In the year 1947, Asian Relations Conference was held in India, and 29 countries attended it. They have discussed about compatibility and relationship between and among various Asian countries. In the year 1947, Asian Relations Conference was held in India, and you all know, in the year 1955, Bandung Conference, also called as Africa-Asia Conference, Bandung Conference, also called as Afro-Asian Conference, was held in Indonesia, Bandung. In the year 1955, Afro-Asian Conference, also called as Bandung Conference, was held at Indonesia. It was held at Indonesia, and this laid the foundations of better relations between Africa and Asia. Not only that, this laid the foundation for NAM, Non-Alignment Movement. The Bandung Conference in 1955, which Jawaharlal Nehru attended and pioneered, along with Sukarno of Indonesia, laid the foundations for NAM. So, Asian Relations Conference in 1947, attended by 29 countries, Bandung Conference in 1955 are the two important conferences for the development of relations internally within Asia and Africa. These two things Jawaharlal Nehru led. And this was a surprising fact that in the year 1947 itself, India has conducted a meeting for Asian relations, also called as Asian Relations Conference. Coming back, as a peace-loving man, Nehru also signed Panchashil. As a peace-loving man, Nehru signed Panchashil with China, with all 5 important Buddhist doctrines. And in the beginning, Jawaharlal Nehru was a strong lover of peace, and he told, India will never go for a nuclear bomb. India will never go for a nuclear bomb. He said, nobody can have prophecy over future. Nobody can have prophecy over future, but neither me nor my future governments, will prepare a nuclear bomb, will use nuclear technology for war purposes. He also said, India is located in a strategic portion in the world. In the strategic part in the world, it should have a better foreign policy to deal with our immediate neighbors, like SAARC countries, to deal with our next door neighbors like Africa, Asia, to deal with our distant neighbors like Latin America, Europe, etc. So, he told India is in the strategic position in the world. India is located in the strategic position in the world. We should have an effective foreign policy to deal with immediate neighbors, next door neighbors and distant neighbors. Immediate neighbors are SAARC countries, next door neighbors are Africa, all these countries, Asian, and distant neighbors are like Latin America. So, we should have effective foreign policy to deal with and to mingle with all these countries. Jawaharlal Nehru told. Even the most, we can say, strong leader and also a unique leader in the world, Fidel Castro, used to have a special liking towards Jawaharlal Nehru. Even Fidel Castro. When the whole world disowned Fidel Castro, Jawaharlal Nehru was a man who spoke with Fidel Castro with cordial atmosphere. For that reason, Fidel Castro always used to have special liking towards India. So, such was a man and such was the gentleness of Jawaharlal Nehru. And coming back, you all know Jawaharlal Nehru has a tinge of socialism. In spite of his tinge of socialism, when Soviet Russia attacked Hungary, made an aggression on Hungary, India strongly condemned this attack. When Soviet Russia made an aggression on Hungary, India strongly condemned this aggression on Hungary done by Soviet Russia. When Soviet Russia made an aggression on Hungary, India strongly condemned it. In 1956, when British, French, all these countries tried to work on Suez Canal, tried to attack Suez, control Suez Canal, India condemned the attack. So, in foreign policy, in certain issues, India has taken a very strong stand even in the initial days. India has taken a very strong stand in various foreign policies, foreign issues. It is not that India has played a safe game. Wherever there is an aggression, wherever there is democratic problem, India used to support the victim countries, poor countries, and India used to discourage aggressions. And even in the first war, after India's independence, that's Korean War, India has sent its troops for peace, and Lieutenant General Timmaiah was sent for reconciliation process. Lieutenant General Timmaiah from India was sent for reconciliation process. As a peace-loving country, Jawaharlal Nehru had laid a very strong foreign policy, and Jawaharlal Nehru never believed in preemption, never believed in attacks. Whenever there is an attack on India, India retaliated till date, but India never made a war on its own, never attacked. India never believed in doctrine of preemption. That was a strong foreign policy foundation, strong value. Even today we follow with the Nehruvian legacy. India never is an aggressive country. India never attacked and never showed territorial ambitions on its neighbors. This is the strong value which we got from our architect of our foreign policy, Jawaharlal Nehru. And Nehru said, if you align ourselves with any power, if we align ourselves with any power, with any superpower, we have to compromise with our national sovereignty. Somebody else will take our foreign policy decisions. At this point of time, India cannot afford this. India got hard-won independence. So, as a gentleman and a statesman, he was a statesman, Nehru. He visualized that if independence is not maintained in the foreign policy, we have to compromise with our sovereignty. For that reason, not only for India and for the benefit of all developing and underdeveloped countries in the world, he laid the foundations of a great movement called non-alignment movement. He laid the foundations of a great movement called non-alignment movement. He was a visionary. As you all know, statesmen think about future generations, politicians think about next elections. Statesmen think about future generations, politicians think about next elections. And even today, the NAM's foundations are very strong. The NAM's roots are very strong. Just remember the fact, even today, 120 members in the world, 120 countries in the world are the members of NAM. Even today, 120 countries in the world are the members of NAM. The fact itself shows that how relevant the NAM is and how relevant our founding father is in the NAM's ideals. And in fact, many call Jawaharlal Nehru was an idealist in foreign policy. To an extent, he might be idealist, but sometimes there is no wrong in idealism. And he also extended the same idealism with China. But unfortunately, in 1962, China attacked India. In 1962, China attacked India. And for this, Jawaharlal Nehru, many criticized him that he was too idealist. But he extended a warm hand to China. And it was China which broke the trust, not India. It was China which broke the trust, not India. Though he was an idealist, his Panchashil is a true doctrine. We cannot ignore that. In fact, Hindi Chini Bai was a tagline when Jawaharlal Nehru extended his helping hand to China, friendship hand to China. And more importantly, in the UN permanent seat to China, UNSC permanent seat, India supported. See, India never had an inhibition to support its neighbor to sit permanently in the UNSC. That was India's big heart. We should understand it. It is not India's weakness, but India's goodwill gesture. We have to understand it is India's goodwill gesture. Nobody can doubt the initial stages of India's foreign policy where India extended a great help to China in getting permanent seat in UNSC. Why don't you think in a positive way? Why don't we understand in a positive way? In a better way, Jawaharlal Nehru had done good thing. That is, he has shown his big heart in helping China in all the respects. And when Dalai Lama have come to India, India have given a warm welcome, religious asylum to Dalai Lama. When Tibetan refugees have come to India, along with Dalai Lama, we helped them. When Jewish refugees have come to India, here you should understand a point. For Jawaharlal Nehru and Gandhi, Einstein wrote a letter. Personally, Einstein wrote a letter to support Israel state. To Jawaharlal Nehru and Gandhi, Einstein, the great scientist, Einstein wrote a letter, but both of them ignored the letter. This was India's foreign policy. In 1949, when Israel state was formed, occupying the Palestinian territory, India was in support of stateless people called Palestinians. When Einstein himself personally wrote letter to Nehru and Gandhi, they have not heard this and they have offered a deaf ear to Einstein. This was the greatness of India's support to human rights, support to distressed people. So, this is how we have led our foreign policy with values. It is not the India's weakness that India got hit by China in 1962, but it was in fact India's strength, how India withstood in spite of all these attacks. This is the serious thing which you have to remember. In 1964, Jawaharlal Nehru died. From 1947 to 1964, from 1947 to 1964, the foreign policy have seen a glorious years because of Nehru. And Nehru believed in a doctrine called Monroe Doctrine. Monroe Doctrine, M-U-N-R-O-E, Monroe Doctrine. What is Monroe Doctrine? Monroe Doctrine is Nehru always used to condemn the third party interference in the internal affairs. Monroe Doctrine believes that no third country or third party should interfere in the internal affairs in the region. This is Monroe Doctrine. When two countries in the region are fighting, no third country should come and interfere. This is Monroe Doctrine. Nehru was a strong believer of Monroe Doctrine. Okay. So, remember, though he has a socialist tinge, he condemned Soviet Russia when it attacked Hungary. And when Suez Canal was tried to occupied by Anglo-French forces, Nehru condemned it. And when Korean War is going on, Nehru tried to establish peace, and Nehru tried to protect India-China relations by drafting a Panchashil, and Nehru tried to lead the countries by NAM, and Nehru tried to follow value-based foreign policy by holding talks between Asian countries in Asian Relations Conference and Afro-Asian Conference in Bandung. In fact, Nehru laid a strong foundation to India's nuclear policy without opting for a nuclear bomb. India laid strong foundation to Nehru's India's science and technology policy without focus on attacking other country or purchasing arms and equipments in the beginning. But Nehru's foreign policy values, though some got transformed with the changing times, still India has certain values laid by Jawaharlal Nehru.